Well, Mets fans, the 2025 season has officially come to an end, and it was nothing short of a very frustrating year to not only watch, but cover as a Mets fan, including myself. And if there's one takeaway I have, it is simply good. This team needs changes of drastic proportions, and we're going to see those changes happen in real time as soon as the coming days from now. And we already have a lot of key reporting that has dropped over the past 12 to 24 hours, which suggests what exactly those changes are going to be for this Mets team, and ultimately what is next for them now as they head into a lengthy offseason, getting themselves set for what went wrong in 2025 and how they can get themselves right here for 2026. How we doing, everybody? Let me know all your initial reactions and thoughts in the comments down below. Not only to the Mets season officially coming to a close now, not cracking postseason play with the Cincinnati Reds, but looking down the barrel, which is most certainly a lengthy offseason where a lot of questions need to be answered that we're going to hear some answers of later on today at the time of this video dropping from David Stearns, as he will have a presser that we will break down in a separate live show later on this evening on the platform. So make sure you guys are chiming in for that. In the meantime, we have a lot of key reporting headline by Steve Cohen, as yes, Steve Cohen has officially spoken to us Mets fans as of over the past hour at the time of this video now dropping each and every one of you. We're going to dissect what Steve Cohen has to say and ultimately what we could expect from him moving forward this offseason, along with Pete Alonso, the polar bear. As a surprise to absolutely nobody, Pete Alonso's opting out of his contract and will yet again elect for agency. What does this mean for Alonso's future, the Mets' potential in bringing him back versus not, and everything else in between, along with the Mets' adamancy to part ways with multiple coaches in this coaching staff currently. And yes, folks, it does appear that Eric Chavez will be a part of that discussion barring changes. We're going to get into all that latest reporting, where it stems from, and more of the immediate changes that are going to be had with this Mets team moving forward. Everybody, thank you so much for chiming in, and thank you so much for the endless support throughout the entire course of this season. Win, lose, or draw, you guys have shown up plenty, and I sincerely thank every single one of you guys. Shout out to our amazing sponsors that make today's video happen, that being at SeatGeek, that has you covered with all of your ticketing needs, just like you guys did all throughout the course of the season, and thank you so much for it as well. By utilizing our promo code WARDY10, link down below, that way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase for Mets games. Well, folks, you can utilize them now for whatever you need in the ticketing space, whether it's NHL, NBA right around the corner, NFL every single weekend, comedy shows, concert shows, you name it, SeatGeek has you covered. Utilize our promo code WARDY10, WARDY10 down below for 10% off your next ticket purchase, and Manta Sleep that has you covered for the best sleep masks in the game today, but more on them later on in today's show, everybody. And in case you guys are wondering why am I starting off today's segment by showing highlights from the Mets' final win of the season, and folks, I want to appreciate at least that one sliver of happiness I've had over the past 40 to 72 hours, and that was this victory headlined by Clay Holmes looking fantastic as a stopper, but most notably there, Pete Alonso carrying the weight on the offensive end, and that 5-0 victory for the Mets. Because Pete Alonso is a focal point of our discussion today, and I have a lot to say on Pete Alonso as he has keywords that he spoke to about with the media this past day that we're going to share with each and every one of you. But let's first get this conversation started, everybody, by showing you guys what Steve Cohen, Mets owner, had to say himself with the media that we just saw quite literally over the past hour and a half or so at the time this video first dropping. Folks, it is as follows. Steve Cohen states the following: Mets fans everywhere, I owe you an apology. You did your part by showing up and supporting the team. We didn't do our part. We will do a post-mortem and figure out the obvious and less obvious reasons why the team didn't perform up to your and my expectations. We are all feeling raw emotions today. I know how much time and effort you have put into this team. I hope he knows how much time and effort I put in as well, as someone who literally has built this as their full-time job. And I say that and as someone who's very grateful for it. But in seasons like this, there are not many two things to take away and say you're grateful for outside of the thousands of you guys that watch here daily, and I appreciate every single one of you. The result was unacceptable. Your emotions tell me how much you care and continues to motivate the organization to do better. Thank you to the best fans in the sport. And I replied to this and I said, thank you, Steve, for finally shedding some light on this. We've been waiting for it. And I can only imagine how frustrated someone like Steve Cohen is out of anyone in Mets land, because he's a man who's invested not only millions, but billions of dollars into this organization over the past 5 seasons. And now he's witnessed more losing than winning in 3 of the 5 years that he has been owner of this Mets club. And I concluded my response to Cohen here by saying how hopefully the actions that are made this offseason will reaffirm the Mets' continued willingness to put out a sustained winner, a sustained team of success for this team in Flushing, that being the New York Mets. And when we talk about sustainability, this is something the Mets have not had much at all since Steve Cohen has become owner. Not only when you look at front office down, when looking at Jared Porter, to Zach Scott, to Billy Epler, to now David Stearns, to the managerial position, from Louis Rojas, to Buck Showalter, to now here in Carlos Mendoza, to the continued carousel of supporting cast coaches, as well as the abundance of change in players, we know it has not been for a lack of effort on Steve Cohen's end when trying to do everything in his power to just make this team have the right step forward to have their winning ways hopefully continue. The problem is that there has been that lack of sustainability paired with a lack of consistency with this team. And it's not just a lack of consistency from player personnel, front office personnel, and everything else that we had relayed, but there's a lack of consistency in what the philosophy is to be a New York Met. There has not been something that has been embodied year in and year out that you go into Flushing, Queens as a player and you say, this is the kind of baseball that we are supposed to play. You can look across the game today and look at various different teams that have continued success, and the commonality that you will see is they have a structure in the way that they play that stays true, that stays relatively consistent, and the team buys into it year in and year out. The big problem that we have seen with this Mets team year in and year out under Steve Cohen, along with the many years of unfortunate years that we saw under the Wilpons, is that there has not been that consistent buy-in by the players. So say what you will about Carlos Mendoza, about other aspects about the coaching staff, about David Stearns, everyone else down the laundry list, they all have their rightful criticisms, and deservedly so. We also can see in that same light that these players need to be held accountable, and I think accountability, without a doubt, is going to be the thing that Steve Cohen emphasizes most this offseason, which is why, as I stated in yesterday's postgame show, our final postgame show of the 2025 calendar season. Thank you to everybody that checked that out. Make sure to check it out for watching this one in case you haven't already. You know, going back to this and taking a look at, as we mentioned in our postgame show and everything, this Mets team is going to have changes, and if you don't think that Steve Cohen is going to go absolute scorched earth this offseason to do everything in his power to get this team right, then I have a bridge to sell you, because scorched earth does not necessarily define it as, oh, we're going to go ahead and spend $2 million this offseason now instead of, say, $1. What it means is that there is going to be an adamancy to hold players accountable, hold coaching staff accountable, hold the front office accountable, and actually hopefully build a sustained winner here. And in order for the Mets to get to that point, they need, and they will, cut ties with people that we have loved and loved in this organization. Whether it's key players that have been part of the core group over the years, whether it's people in the coaching staff that we have obviously had criticisms of, but have also liked and appreciated in other aspects when the Mets have had more success versus losing ways that really plagued them over the past 90-plus games of the regular season in 2025. Whatever the case may be, changes are inevitably coming, and we're going to see these changes announced as soon as the next 24, 48, 72 hours or so. Do not be surprised if David Stearns maybe has some remarks to share that emphasize those certain changes that we will then further break down on the platform later on today in a live show that we will either be live either directly after David Stearns' presser or more in the evening towards night, when I think that there's going to be a greater contingent of people that can come in because you guys won't be necessarily busy with your normal 9-to-5s will work, among other things. Either way, we will have more coverage later on today regarding what David Stearns' Mets Pobo has to say, but I really want to amplify what Steve Cohen stated here because I think it's really important to not only see him finally share a remark for the first time since mid-August, in which the last time he tweeted out anything in mid-August was replying to someone basically on fan support, and that was that. No one is more disgruntled and more frustrated than Mets owner Steve Cohen moving forward. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what he does. It's going to be interesting to see how emotionally in check he is versus does his emotion get the best of him at all when it comes to maybe having his hands on more decisions than a year's past. You really have to wonder and ponder what is next now for Steve Cohen and this Mets team. But rest assured, we will find it out, and once we do, we'll break it down all here on WardyNYM as we do every single offseason, especially since Steve Cohen has become owner. Now, folks, let's get into what is happening with the Polar Bear and Pete Alonso, along with those multiple coaches that look like that they are going to be parted with everybody. And let's start our discussion here actually by leaning into a bit more on the coaching staff and what can be had there for this Mets team, because folks, it does look like changes are inevitable. And as you guys can see from Andy Martino of SNY, love him or hate him, Andy usually has his sources on point as we get into the early offseason, and he came out with an article yesterday talking about what is now next for the New York Mets. And in said article that you guys can check out that I will have linked down below, it did amplify that the Mets are going to have changes to their coaching staff coming. And while he did initially state that there has been no immediate inclination that Carlos Mendoza will be a part of those changes from his own sources that he has heard, obviously this is ever changing. Things can change as we get into the offseason. His immediate counter is that usually the processes to prepare for a managerial change happen well before where we are currently at now with the season having ended. And say what you will, but the fact that the Mets didn't make playoffs until the final day of the regular season actually hurt the odds of Carlos Mendoza being parted with, and here's why. Knowing that this was not one of those things that became a slam dunk guarantee of the Mets not making playoffs, say going all the way back to June, even though we could have said it was a guarantee going back to June because the Mets were never a good team since then for the most part. David Stearns has reiterated to the media, including guys like John Heyman and Joel Sherman in a recent podcast on the New York Post for the past couple weeks, that, he's proud of what Mendoza has done and that they would have probably already had the processes happen before the season ended to make a managerial change, because there isn't a whole lot of turnaround to do that in an offseason. Off-season's lengthy. The Mets don't play a game again until roughly 180 days from now, but it's going to go by in the snap of a finger like it does every single offseason, and the Mets know that they have a lot that needs to be handled when it comes to other aspects of the coaching staff and the player personnel alone. So something that I've been saying to you guys time and time again over the past calendar week, and I'll say it once more, do I think Carlos Mendoza should be parted with? I think there's rightful reason to part ways with Carlos Mendoza. I think it's an absolutely tough sell to Mets fans to bring him back for next season. At that same time, though, I understand the counter as to why he may not be parted with and why this is still just a first-time manager in the second year as a first-time manager and a David Stearns acquisition. So David's going to, of course, give him a leash as his first manager hired under this Steve Cohen era with David Stearns, mind you. And it's a terrible look when you look at the organization from an outsider's lens to have 4 managers in a 6-year span with your owner, Steve Cohen. I know you may counter and say, well, it's also a terrible look to have a manager come back after he made continued wrong decisions in game, including the final game of the season for the Mets by pulling Brooks Raley when he did. I'm not saying you're wrong for that. I was jumping and screaming along with you, going through all those emotions. All I'm here to say is that no, it is not a guarantee that Carlos Mendoza will be parted with, nor do I think it's a guarantee that he will stay either. We will find out in the coming days more on clarity in regards to Carlos Mendoza, but we already have clarity in regards to the other aspects of the coaching staff. And what Andy reaffirms here is, I think, what we need to know. Several changes to the coaching staff are coming, and he doesn't say that lightly. If Andy's going to go out of his way to make that kind of post, there's good reason for it, and that's because we know it's inevitably happening. He also follows up by saying, I know fans are hurting, but it's gross to celebrate this. These are people we're talking about. And my counter this, Andy, is that, yes, they are people, and I don't have any personal ill will with Eric Chavez or Jeremy Barnes, but it miss me with the nonsense and wanting to now sympathize with individuals that, in the case of Chavez, who made a good amount of money in his playing career, made hundreds of thousands of dollars every single season under the Mets' salary, under their payroll, as a coach for them. And now we're supposed to feel bad that they're going to be parted with when jobs will more than likely be open in other organizations as soon as they leave this organization, as long as they have interest to seek them. I get it. It's not fun to have a transition being parted with, to then go elsewhere and have uncertainty as to what your future is as someone without a technical job. But let's not act like that these are guys working your typical 9 to 5 and that they have no other route to choose from, or that they didn't have at least decent financial backing heading into this. That's pretty much nonsensical. That is not at all in hand with what I think genuine fans feel and understand here. And that's where I think there's that continued miss from what people like Andy say at times, as well as others here in the media, where they just do not hit on the mark on understanding fan point of view, because they can't comprehend fan point of view the way that you and I most certainly can. And when we talk about Eric Chavez, and when we talk about Jeremy Barnes, and when we talk about Mike Sarbaugh, what do all these guys have in common? These are all coaches that are more than likely not going to now be here for 2026. And I've told you guys this for a long period of time now. If you guys think there's a chance, and you know what, that Eric Chavez is Mets hitting coach next year, I got a bridge to sell you. I think it goes without saying, but knowing that coaching changes are inevitable, Eric Chavez is going to be one of multiple dominoes I'll be parted with. And there's a great reality that pretty much everybody not named Antoine Richardson, the best first base coach in all of baseball, will help the Mets be the best base running team in baseball. He is the reason why Juan Soto was almost a 40 stolen bag individual this season for the Mets when he's never done anything remotely close to his career. Jeremy Hefner is another man who I do not think is at all locked to be parted with. There are some question marks as to what the future is for Jeremy on if he wants to stay here. One, does he want to be utilizing a different role outside of his role as Mets pitching coach, because he's been considered more of a front office role in times in the past as well. So there's a bit of uncertainty there, but when looking at guys that pretty much feel like nothing's short of a lock to be parted with, it's headlined by Eric Chavez. It's headlined by Mike Sarba at third base. It's headlined by probably Jeremy Barnes as well, because if you're going to cut bait with one of these hitting coaches, why wouldn't you do it with the other? Because what do both Barnes and Chavez have in common? These are guys that were grandfathered in as David Stearns became president, meaning that these were guys that were here before David was actually president for the team. They were here under the Billy Up regime and beyond that. So knowing that these guys were here as not even David Stearns hires means that there is no pre-existing bias to warrant keeping them in the organization. He gave them a leash. He gave them a longer leash than they rightfully deserved, and now it's time to cut ties with that leash, something that's been long overdue, to finally put this team in the right direction, to get new faces, new voices heard in that clubhouse. Because we can all agree, if there was one thing that was missing from this Mets team, an offense that technically ranked top 5 in baseball and Fangraphs as wins above replacement, but was Jekyll and Hyde throughout the entire course of the season, is that there was a lack of a voice, and there was a lack of a motivator to get consistently going on a day-by-day, night-by-night basis. How much that falls on Carlos Mendoza versus Eric Chavez, Jeremy Barnes, and the other aspects of the coaching staff, you could say more is on Chavez because he is the leader of this team on the coaching staff. But at the same time, when it comes to offensive output, you need to be better. And the Mets, outside of that one little month of August where they still won 11-17, but still somehow, some way put up the best offensive numbers in team franchise history in a calendar month, with the exception of that, they didn't have a whole lot else to show throughout the entire course of the season. There was a lack of consistency. There was a lack of unity from the Mets core group and their Fab Four versus what you got. And they're pretty much 5 through 9 in their lineup. 5 through 9, Mets were right around a 630 to 650 OPS or so. 1 through 4, very different circumstance. The 1 through 4 was their stronghold throughout the course of the season. But the lack of consistency from the younger individuals like Mark Vientos, like Ronnie Mauricio when he got his playing time, like at times Brett Beatty, even though he stepped up mightily in the second half. The center field, which was an absolute blunder from the start with Siri breaking his leg, Tyrone Taylor not hitting a beach ball for 2 months, and then Cedric Mullins looking like a man who's scared of his own shadow for the 2 months that he was here since being acquired from the trade deadline. All this is here to say is that the Mets need more change when evaluating this offense. And it's not just player personnel. It's about the actual guys that they put in the position to vocalize what they will be doing on a day-by-day basis and the kind of mentality that they're supposed to have heading into each and every game out of the 162 and then eventually postseason play. But folks, to expand more on this now, because we have a lot more to get into on not just the Mets and looking like that they're now in line to fire multiple coaches, not just one, not just say Eric Chavez and only Eric Chavez. It's looking like it's going to be multiple at this rate, everybody. I definitely want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you in favor of the Mets parting ways with pretty much this entire coaching staff, with the exception of the couple that I stated? Are you adamant on Carlos Mendoza being parted with? Are you adamant on other aspects of this coaching staff being parted with beyond what I just relayed to you? Whatever the case may be, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for that, everybody. And now let's continue our discussion by getting into Pete Alonso and what is next for him and his Mets future as he's officially opting out of his contract. Listen, Mets fans, as much as I love making content for you guys, something that can definitely be a struggle is getting proper sleep at night, especially when I'm working late to give you guys content to drop in the AM. I'm just hoping to get some semblance of sleep, but unfortunately that doesn't happen at the times I want it to because the sunlight is constantly poking in my eyes when I'm just trying to sleep in maybe an extra hour or two. Well, folks, no longer is that the issue, and I'm very grateful to announce our amazing sponsor on the platform, that being that Manta Sleep Mask, everybody, because I've been repping their sleep mask for a number of years now since I've worked with them in the past, and they have been an absolute game changer. When it comes to getting comfortable sleep at night, look no further. As long as you have your Manta Mask, you're going to be good to go. And what I mean by this, everybody, just take a look. This is the Manta Mask Pro that I've been using for literally 2.5 to 3 years now. I use this as much as possible almost every single night. I kid you not, I had a bad sleep 2 nights ago because I left it downstairs and I didn't have it in my bedroom. So I usually wake up and kind of keep it on my head because it's comfortable for me personally for my first couple hours. I know I'm a weirdo, but that's okay. But not only do I love the fact that their technology makes it so easy to have no sunlight whatsoever getting in your face when you're repping these, but their cups that you guys see back here, you can take them off and you can properly adjust them any which way that is best for you and your face alignment. So when it comes to comfortability, there's nothing even close to as good as what I've experienced with our great friends here at Manta Mask. And as you guys can head over to mantasleep.com, check out their products for yourself, because they don't just have the Sleep Mask Pro that I'm currently repping that helps so much, not only the comfortability, especially when I'm sleeping on my side. Other ones are just way too bulky when I've used other products separate from Manta, but they have been a game changer. And as you guys can see, they have a plethora of options, not just their current Pro Mask that you guys see right there that I currently have. They also have the Sound Mask Next Gen, which gets raving reviews because I'm one of those guys that needs fan noise at night to sleep. And when I'm doing road trips especially, or let's just take it back a couple years ago when I visited my buddy Borna out in San Diego, I need a good, nice, comfortable sleep. He gave me his sound mask to utilize when I was sleeping on his couch, and I slept like a baby because I was just running a fan noise that, again, is Bluetooth, mind you, in that mask, and is so comfortable, not a problem, and it even has some weight to it, which I personally like there to get a nice sleep. You also have the silk mask here, their normal sleep mask as well, and the list goes on and on. They have ones for kids. They have a weighted mask that you guys can see down here. They have a cooling mask if you want your face to be a little bit cool at night. Maybe it's the contrary, you want a steam mask for your face. So all in all, when it comes to sleep mask, our great friends at Manta Sleep have you covered, everybody. So do yourself a favor, save some dollars on your next purchase with our great friends at Manta Sleep by simply heading over to mantasleep.com and utilizing our promo code WARDY. That way you too are going to be getting 10% off your purchase. Shout out to Manta Sleep, as always, for being an amazing sponsor on the platform. Alrighty, folks, once more, check out Manta, link down below. Thank you so much for that, everybody. Now, last but not least, let's talk about, yes, you guessed it, the Polar Bear and Pete Alonso. Because, folks, this is what Pete Alonso had to say to the media yesterday, as he has officially announced that he is already opting out of his contract. Something that we've seen Alonso and others wait at least a number of days until they kind of need to make known if they're going to opt out or not. Alonso did not hesitate at all from reaffirming what we all knew was going to happen, obviously, but now becoming a reality. And before fans freak out and say, oh no, you know, he had this set up for a long time, there's a bad reason for it. No, there isn't. All Alonso did was learn from his past year as a pending free agent and then having a lengthy offseason how to go about this thing the second time through. And he's obviously going to try to go about this offseason process quicker and more efficient than how things were last year. And all in all, I think that is going to happen for rightful reason, and I will expand as to why that is in a minute. But in the meantime, let's hear from the Polar Bear himself and see what he has to say.
What are your thoughts about your future with this franchise?
I mean, for me, like, I mean, playing for this organization, the city, I mean, it's really, I mean, for me, like, they've continued to believe in me. And, I mean, I've loved playing here. There's some great guys in this clubhouse. There's some great people in the staff. And, I mean, every single day, it's just been a pleasure coming to work and putting on the orange and blue. So for me, it's, yeah, I mean, I've really appreciated and been nothing but full of gratitude every single day. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I've loved being a Met, so hopefully they've appreciated me the same.
Do you expect to opt out of your contract, Pete?
Yeah, yes.
So there's Alonso reaffirming that he's going to be opting out. Contrary from what Edwin Diaz said to the media yesterday, is he's going to take some time, obviously, to figure out what he's going to do because he doesn't know yet. So he hasn't thought about this, or at least he's acting like he hasn't thought about this in the way that Alonso certainly has. And it makes sense as to why Diaz and Alonso aren't on the same wavelength there. Edwin hasn't really opted out of a deal before outside of just be a normal free agent a couple years ago with the Mets before he signed his 5-year, $100+ million new deal with us. Now, he doesn't need to opt out, but we know Edwin is more than likely going to for the best interest of himself financially. But Alonso is something that we knew for a while, and as you guys can see, the Polar Bear had nothing short of another very productive season. Another year where Alonso was not able to hit the 40 home run plateau, which would have been nice, but still 126 RBIs, a 524 slug, 871 OPS, a 272 average, played every single game this season, 87 runs scored, 170 hits, 41 doubles, 61 walks, and was without any doubt, the most clutch Mets hitter outside of Juan Soto down the stretch with runners in scoring position. And that stat alone is what we love so much about Pete Alonso, the polar bear. And that is why, in part, we don't want to see him go, along with the obvious. He is the Mets home run king. He literally is the face of the Mets franchise currently and home runs. So when you look at everything that Alonso has done for this organization, going back to his rookie breakout in 2019, there has been a consistent slugger there. Now, has he had inconsistencies? For sure, but knowing that Alonso had a far stronger season through and through means he's going to be getting a bag, and he's going to be getting a contract that's far more in line with what he wants versus, I think, what the Mets want to do with him. And here's why. The Mets cannot attach they cannot attach a contract to him like they have in years past that we have seen in order to potentially get a comp pick or deter people from actually wanting to go ahead and signing him. Knowing that they can no longer put that qualifying offer on him means that Alonso can not only speak to anyone freely, but there is nothing holding any team back for the most part from signing Alonso other than what his actual demands are. And what his current market value is being deemed as is right around 6 years of 175 to 185 million. So we're looking at Alonso, who's going to be seeking north of a $200 million deal. Not surprised. This is what he started last offseason with, and then got all the way down to eventually, pretty much just 2 years of, 50 million or so, 54 million, whatever the case may be with the Mets here. Apologies for the camera going in and out. This tends to happen every once in a while. So let me go ahead and fix this live in real time. Then we'll continue our segment here. There we go. Apologies for that, everybody. But Alonso is one of these guys who we know wants to be here. He has reaffirmed that he wants to be here. Could losing in the manner that the Mets did this season change that mentality finally? Could this finally be the time that Pete Alonso says to himself, you know what? Maybe I'm better off going elsewhere. And that is what separates himself from the organization. I don't know. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered, obviously, with Alonso as we head into what is going to be a lengthy offseason. But when we evaluate David Stern, Steve Cohen, and the Mets approach, I think we can all agree it's going to go in direct hand as it did last year. They're going to be stubborn. They're going to want him back at, I think, what will be a respectable high AAV, but they're probably not going to give any long-term commitment. And understandably so from their point of view. As valuable as Alonso is, and while there is not really an immediate replacement for him outside of maybe someone like Josh Naylor this offseason, who is Arizona Diamondback turned Seattle Mariner trying to have a deep playoff run for them this year, it's kind of slim pickings as to what would be a proper replacement for him externally. So that alone is why it goes without saying Alonso.
What are your thoughts about your future with this franchise?
I apologize for that audio running, everybody. That ran for 2 seconds. But I think it goes without saying that it's in the best interest of this Mets team to bring back guys that not only want to be here, but have clear value. And Alonso checks off all those boxes. Now, I think the biggest counter as to why Alonso may not return is twofold. It's one, change of scenery, along with the Mets being stubborn and not wanting to commit, significant years without basically an opt-out maybe after every single season. That's what I think the Mets should do here. I think the Mets should approach Alonso with a higher AAV, but an opt-out every year, and basically just view this as a yearly thing. But from Alonso's point of view, is that really in the best interest of him? It is if they're all player options, which means he would have full control and dictation and kind of what happens moving forward. But knowing that he still probably wouldn't get a long-term deal out of it is where I'm sure he wouldn't be overly pleased. So the other aspect as to why Alonso not returning can be feasible and may make sense is the simple reality that the Mets need to break this up. Look at this core group. What has this core group done when it comes to success? The Mets have had Pete Alonso for now going on 6-7 years, and they don't have anything to show for it. And this is not to say Alonso's the problem, but sometimes there needs to be some form of clubhouse change in order to get the best out of a ball club. And when you evaluate the Fab Four and Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, and Brandon Nimmo, we could all agree Brandon Nimmo is the player that Mets fans would be most willing to part with. But he's under contract for still a bunch of years, and he's not going anywhere at this point in time. Alonso is a man who's a pending free agent now, and he has all the right in the world to go sign a big contract that he wants elsewhere, the same way that the Mets have all the right in the world to deny him on a long-term deal. But will this come down to more on not winning enough with Alonso and maybe just wanting a bit more of a culture change in this organization than anything else? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying if he does part ways with this team, these are the factors as to how we more than likely got here. So, Mets fans, I definitely want to hear from every single one of you watching live on a replay in the comments down below. Do you want to see Pete Alonso return this Mets team? Do you not want to see him return? Do you think he's not going to return this Mets team, or do you think he will? We're going to lean in a lot more as to players that'll be staying versus leaving here on the platform in the coming days. So make sure that you do not miss out on any of the content that is coming your way, everybody. But that is going to do it for our latest Mets breakdown on the platform of all the latest key reports, news, rumblings, and Metsland. We are your #1 stop shop for all things Mets news, rumors, live shows, and everything else in between all season and off season long here. So make sure you guys have your subscription and your notifications on, because we're going to be pumping out daily content all off-season long, just like we always do here on the WardyNYM platform. Once more, thank you guys so much for the continued support throughout the entire course of this season. It was a roller coaster. It was not enjoyable for 90-plus games in a row, but I appreciate going through my pain and suffering with the thousands of you guys who chime in here every single day. So thank you guys once more for that. Thank you guys again for checking out SeatGeek and Mantis Sleep, both linked down below for you guys to check out whenever you have interest. And this is your guy Wardy signing out. I'll see you guys later at the time of this video dropping for our live stream after David Stern speaks to the media. Peace out, everybody.